The courtroom was unusually silent that morning. Rows of spectators leaned forward in their seats, sensing that something about this case felt different. At the center of the room stood a confident police officer, his uniform perfectly pressed, his badge shining under the courtroom lights. For years, that badge had given him authority, power, and a sense that no one could ever challenge him. Across the room stood a calm black woman dressed in a simple but elegant suit. She showed no signs of fear, no anger, and no desperation. Instead, there was something almost unsettling about the quiet confidence in her posture. Many assumed she was just another civilian caught in the system, someone who had dared to question authority and was now paying the price. But what almost no one in that courtroom realized was that the officer had made the biggest mistake of his career, because the woman he had dragged into court wasn't just another citizen. She was someone whose past, rank, and influence could destroy everything he believed made him untouchable. And within minutes, the entire courtroom would discover the truth. Before this unbelievable story unfolds, take a moment to share, comment, and subscribe to the channel Black Legacy, so more powerful stories like this can reach people around the world. What happened next would leave an entire department questioning everything they thought they knew about power, justice, and respect. The city had always been proud of its police force. Uniforms represented order, badges symbolized trust, and for many residents, officers were seen as protectors of the community. But like many places across the country, the reality beneath that polished image was more complicated. Officer Daniel Mercer had spent nearly a decade building his reputation within the department. Tall, disciplined, and known for his strict approach to authority, Mercer believed strongly in the idea that officers had to maintain absolute control in every situation. To him, questioning an officer's decision wasn't just disrespectful. It was a challenge to the entire system. Over the years, Mercer had developed a habit that some colleagues quietly noticed but rarely challenged. His interactions with certain citizens often carried a tone of suspicion that others didn't experience, particularly when it came to people who looked like they didn't belong in certain places. But Mercer never saw himself as biased. In his mind, he was simply doing his job. One afternoon, the moment that would eventually change everything began in the parking lot of the government complex. The building itself was used by several federal agencies, and security around the area was always tight. Mercer had been assigned to patrol the perimeter that day. As he walked through the lot, his eyes scanned the rows of parked vehicles and the people moving in and out of the building. Then he noticed her, a black woman walking calmly toward the entrance. She carried herself with quiet confidence, dressed professionally in a burgundy blazer and dark slacks. In her hand was a folder containing documents. To anyone else, she would have looked like a professional heading to an important meeting. But Mercer's instincts immediately went on alert. He watched her approach the security checkpoint. Instead of continuing on his route, he stepped forward and stopped her. The interaction began as what he considered a routine question: identification, purpose of visit, authorization to enter. But what Mercer didn't realize was that the woman he had stopped had already spent years navigating situations exactly like this. Her name was Colonel Maya Richardson, a decorated officer with a long history of service in the military. She had spent decades building a career defined by leadership, intelligence, and dedication. And she had also spent those years learning how easily people underestimated her. That afternoon, she was scheduled to attend a federal briefing regarding veteran policy initiatives. Everything about her visit had already been cleared. But Mercer wasn't satisfied. Something about her presence didn't fit the assumptions he carried in his mind. Instead of accepting the document she provided, Mercer continued pressing. He questioned her authority to be there. He questioned her explanation. And eventually, he made a decision that would send shockwaves through the department. He detained her, not because she had done anything wrong, but because he believed his authority allowed him to do so. What Mercer didn't realize in that moment was that the situation he had just created would soon move far beyond a simple misunderstanding, because Maya Richardson wasn't the type of person to quietly accept injustice. At first, the incident seemed small, just another stop, another disagreement, another person being questioned by law enforcement. But the details of the encounter quickly complicated the situation. Richardson calmly explained her purpose again. She referenced a federal meeting. She showed official credentials. But Mercer remained convinced that something about the situation didn't add up. In his mind, he believed he was preventing a potential security breach. And when Richardson firmly insisted that he verify her military credentials through proper channels, Mercer interpreted her composure as defiance. Within minutes, additional officers arrived. The situation escalated. Witnesses nearby began recording. Some were confused. Others recognized immediately that something felt deeply wrong. Richardson remained composed the entire time. She didn't argue loudly. She didn't resist. Instead, she stood with the calm patience of someone who had spent years leading soldiers in high-pressure environments. Mercer, however, had already made up his mind. He issued a citation related to obstruction and failure to comply. And when Richardson refused to accept the accusation, Mercer made another decision that would later become central to the entire case. He processed the incident for court. What Mercer believed would be a routine legal matter slowly began transforming into something far more serious. Because as soon as Richardson left the scene, the process of documentation began. Security footage, witness statements, military records, federal clearance logs. Within days, several individuals within the military and government offices became aware of what had happened, and many of them were deeply concerned. Richardson was not just any officer. She had led missions overseas. She had advised high-level policy initiatives. She had trained hundreds of soldiers. Her career represented decades of service to the country. Yet she had just been publicly detained outside a federal building by a local officer who refused to acknowledge her credentials. The story began circulating quietly through military channels, then through legal circles, then through community networks. What had started as a minor incident was now gaining attention from people who understood the broader implications. Meanwhile, Mercer remained confident. From his perspective, he had followed procedure. He believed the court would support his judgment. After all, he was the officer, and the system, as he had always believed, tended to protect its own. But Mercer had underestimated something critical. Maya Richardson wasn't just another name on a case file. She was someone whose life had been built around discipline, evidence, and accountability, and she was about to walk into that courtroom fully prepared. The courtroom filled quickly on the morning of the hearing. Word had quietly spread that something unusual was about to happen. Mercer arrived first. He stood confidently beside the prosecution table, convinced the process would be quick and straightforward. But the atmosphere shifted the moment Richardson entered the room. She walked calmly toward the defense table, carrying a carefully organized folder. Behind her sat several individuals in formal attire. Some wore military uniforms. Others represented legal offices connected to federal agencies. Mercer noticed them but assumed they were simply observers. The judge called the case. Evidence was presented. Mercer described the encounter from his perspective. He emphasized security concerns. He explained his decision-making process. At first, everything seemed normal. Then Richardson's documentation was introduced. Her military record, her federal clearance, her authorization to attend the meeting that day, security logs confirming her appointment, video footage showing the entire interaction. The courtroom grew quieter with every new piece of evidence. The footage revealed Richardson calmly offering credentials. It showed Mercer dismissing them without verification. It showed the escalation that followed. But the moment that changed everything came when the judge reviewed Richardson's service record. Decades of military leadership, multiple commendations, high-level security clearances, and a rank that commanded enormous respect within military circles. The realization spread through the courtroom like a wave. Mercer hadn't just detained a civilian. He had publicly disrespected and unlawfully detained a highly decorated military officer on federal business. The badge he believed made him untouchable suddenly felt very small. The judge's ruling came after a long pause. The charges against Richardson were dismissed immediately, but the consequences didn't end there. The evidence presented raised serious concerns about Mercer's conduct. Internal investigations began soon after. The department faced intense scrutiny. Community leaders demanded accountability. Military representatives expressed frustration over how a decorated officer had been treated. For Maya Richardson, the case wasn't about revenge. It was about principle. For years, She had dedicated her life to serving the country, and she knew that respect for authority had to be balanced with respect for justice. The story quickly spread through media outlets and social platforms. Many saw it as a powerful reminder that authority without humility can lead to serious mistakes. Others saw it as another example of how assumptions can shape actions in ways that harm innocent people. For Mercer, the experience became a turning point that forced him to confront a difficult reality. Power does not make someone immune from accountability. And a badge, no matter how polished, does not replace fairness. But for the thousands of people who later heard Maya Richardson's story, the lesson was even deeper. Never underestimate someone simply because they don't match your expectations. Because sometimes the quietest person in the room carries the strongest story. And sometimes the system changes not because someone shouts the loudest, but because someone refuses to accept injustice. If this story moved you, take a moment to like, share, and comment to let others hear it too. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel Black Legacy for more powerful stories about justice, courage, and the fight against injustice.